Assalamualaikum everyone. As I'm sure you can tell, Grace kind of had to get me to do this kicking and screaming, but when Grace asks you to do something, you can't really say no. So I'm Joe, I'm from Manchester, I'm a student here on Project Illumin, and as Grace has said, I'm editor-in-chief of the project, the Tafsir project, eventually in a few years turning all of these incredible halakas into a published tafsir. It's not just me, there's a team, 8 of us in total, of brilliant, dedicated volunteers. One of whom I see is on the interactive group, so I'm Rashida. Some of them are here. Where to start? I thought it might be useful just to talk about my own journey, my own story, how I came across the professor's thought. And perhaps it'll be of interest and benefit. I suspect that my own story is perhaps a bit more unusual, a bit unique. When I first came across the professor, I was non-Muslim. And now that I come to think of it, my encounter with the professor's thought and my journey with the professor's thought is actually intimately engaged. It's very tightly connected to my journey to Islam. It started, I was thinking about this earlier, it started almost a decade ago exactly, October 2011. I was non-Muslim, typical 21-year-old student. I didn't know anything about Islam, literally nothing, blank canvas. You asked me about Islam in 2011, Muhammad, Quran, Mecca, that's about it. So I'm doing a degree and I have an elective course. I've got 20 credits that I need to fill. I look at the options and there was a course on New Age religion, one on Buddhism, and one called Islam, Gender and Ethics. And I thought, well, you know, Islam's in the news, why not? It sounds more interesting than the others. I'd love to say that I was a diligent, conscientious student, but I mean, I really wasn't. This was how much thought went into these kind of decisions. So I'm doing this course in Islam, Gender and Ethics. It wasn't an introductory course, but I was a beginner, so I was struggling for a bit. But I was getting into it. And then on the 3rd or 4th week, the weekly reading, the assigned reading, is chapter 6 of a book, this book, Speaking in God's Name. Never heard of the book, certainly never heard of the author. You know, it's, at times you don't realise, Classic, this always happens. You know, the kind of like Damascene moment conversion thing, that doesn't really happen. That's kind of overplayed. The reality is you need years and the benefit of hindsight to be able to look back and to know what were the major turning points in your life. You don't realise it at the time. You're just sleepwalking. It's only with the benefit of hindsight. Doing this weekly reading of this chapter of this book by this author, yeah, I had no idea at the time. I started doing this weekly reading and from the first sentence, the opening sentence, do you remember what the sentence was? Sheikh, chapter 6? No. I remember it, I still remember it to this day. Islamic law has staunchly resisted codification, at least until the contemporary age. And I remember just reading this and thinking, and I had to read it again, I said, wait, what? Let's do that again. Islamic law has staunchly resisted codification at least until the contemporary age. I know now what I didn't know then, which is that I had a very preconceived idea of law, of religious law, basically shaped by the biblical tradition, you know, Old Testament, do this, don't do this, do this, don't, 10 Commandments. And I just remember thinking to myself, how can a law not be codified? If a law isn't codified, how do people know what it is? How do people follow a law that isn't uniform and codified? What's this? And then the second half of the sentence, what the hell is this about the contemporary age? What happened in the contemporary age that this codified law? I didn't know what the author, the professor was on about, but I was interested, I was engaged. I then read the chapter, and the chapter is brilliant. If you haven't read chapter 6 of this book, please, I could not encourage you strongly enough. It is polemical, it is iconoclastic in the very best sense of the term. He takes these fatwa from big Saudi names, Bin Baz, and just demolishes them. It is brutal, it is brilliant. I was hooked. With hindsight, that reading sparked an interest in Islamic studies. An interest which became a passion which became kind of an obsession which surprised me, it surprised my family and friends, like what the hell has happened to Joe? It's started a journey which I ended up changing my degree and graduating in Islamic studies. I ended up doing further studies, further degrees, travelling abroad, learning Arabic, and before you know it, 5 years later, I'm Muslim. Again, you just don't know these turning points unless you have the hindsight, and it is another lesson there. We can plan our lives, but God laughs. We can think we have it all in order, and we can plan, you know, a few years I'm going to be here. I mean, I'm sure God just laughs. I mean, there's the verse, yakiduna kayda wa akidu kayda. You know, they plan, but I plan. So it would be too linear to say I read this book and converted. That's not how it happened. It was far more circular, swings and roundabouts, ups and downs, but 6 years later, I'm Muslim. And it is at that time, as a Muslim, 6 years later, that I actually returned to the professor's books. I should just say, this is not going to be a conversion story. I don't do conversion stories. Even the guys here don't know my conversion story, which is probably a bit harsh. I mean, probably should by now. I don't like it. I don't like the way that converts, particularly if they're white, are asked to perform. You know, dance for me, convert, tell me your story. The way in which they're objectified or even fetishized. No, it's just a very unhealthy dynamic, so I don't do that. This is not a conversion story, but what I will say is, converting to Islam is not easy. It's not just a change of belief, and it's not just ritual practices. It's everything. It's a change of worldview. It's being seen like a stranger by family and friends and everything. It's not easy. I've always thought that, you know, like how you have 5 stages of grief? I've always thought, and I've joked about this with friends, there should be like another theme, like the 5 stages of converting to Islam. The first stage, which is the short stage, sheer enthusiasm. Like you've just converted. Oh my God, this is awesome. Prayer is incredible. I love Fajr. Fasting is so cool. That's the initial stage, but that doesn't last. Unless you're Grace, that doesn't last. Grace has been Muslim for 27 years, but still has the enthusiasm of 27 minutes. And unfortunately, she is the exception that proves the rule. Most converts, myself included, that zeal, it dies out. We actually covered this in the Halakha, Surah Al-Hadid, I think. Why does it die out? Many reasons. But that's the first stage. The second stage, confusion. You've got this enthusiasm. You found your answers. You love Islam. You love praying, but no one else does. Why does no one else? Why is every khutbah so bloody boring? Why are you not allowed to ask any questions? Or why the questions that you are allowed to ask are so inanimate? What is this? Confusion. The confusion very quickly becomes anger or bitterness at the way you're treated, the way you're objectified, fetishized, and not helped. Nobody taught me how to pray. I know of other Muslims, white Muslims, male and female. Nobody taught them how to pray, but they were bombarded with marriage proposals. That's funny. It's also kind of not funny. I mean, how that speaks volumes. Is this how it is? So we have the enthusiasm, we have the confusion. Confusion very quickly gives way to bitterness and just why? Why is it like this? And why on earth did nobody tell me it was like this? What I would have done for somebody to tell me when I first converted, oh, by the way, Joe, every khutbah is this boring. Don't travel around trying to find a good one. Because what's the alternative? You learn it the hard way. After months and months and months. And that flame, that spark of faith, it dies out. It gets snuffed out. The 4th stage, resignation. You converted to Islam, you've now known your way around the community, you know what the state of the community is like, and you resign to it, and you make your peace. You understand the status quo, and you make your way around. In my experiences, this was keeping the rest of the Muslim community at an arm's distance, being the only Muslim in my own family, and just kind of, yeah, that's it. So they're the 4 stages of conversion to Islam. It's not 5 stages, it's 4. I had gone through all this in the first 18 months, maybe 2 years. And I've probably gone through it several times over. It's like a conveyor belt. And it is at this time that I actually returned to the professor's works. I don't remember the exact specifics, unfortunately, but I do remember feeling angry at myself for letting the flame die out, angry at the community, and frankly just lonely, and then somehow returning to the professor's works, reasoning with God, and conference of the books. And it was, I'm now Muslim. I'm asking completely different questions. I've got completely different answers I'm looking for, and it's like reading the professor afresh. And I can't quite express, it was like cold, cold water to a thirsty soul. It was, yes, this is it. This is it. This is what I needed to hear. But here's what I wanted to emphasize. What aspects of the professor's works now were speaking to me? It wasn't the intellect, because I already knew that. You know, the professor in secular academia, the professor is a heavyweight. He is venerated. It seems the only people that don't venerate the professor are Muslims. Why is that? Is that because Muslims disagree with the professor? No, that's not the point, because secular academia disagrees with the professor, because secular academia is non-Muslim. But secular academia can appreciate an intellect and the achievements. So sorry, I need to keep this before it becomes a rant.
Go for it.
We have a halakha to get through.
It's okay.
So I'm reading the professor afresh now as a convert, and it's like discovering him and his works all again. But what aspect is it? It was not the intellect, I knew that. Nor was it the personal example and the piety, because I had never met the professor yet. All that came later. What it was, more than anything, was just the common sense. I can't really phrase it better. The common sense. Yes, we have this intellect, and yes, we have this library, and yes, we have 100 halakas and thousands of lectures. But the beautiful thing is, it's the but. But the beautiful thing is, all of this is all about pointing us to an Islam that is natural, that is intuitive. I'm reading Conference of the Books, and the professor's saying, you know, common sense, by the way, common sense means also a basic sense of priorities, a basic sense of ethics, a basic sense of justice. There are worse things happening than the tyranny of women showing their hair. There are genocides happening against Muslims left and right, and we're talking about nail varnish. Really, what the hell is it with nail varnish? If something is ugly and unjust, it cannot be divine. This is the beautiful thing about the professor's work. This is the beautiful thing about Usuli. It's almost like the irony, the twist in the tale. Behind all the books, the half a dozen books and the 40 articles and the library, it just takes us right back to where we started. A natural, intuitive Islam. That's what I needed. Because we often say that, you know, in all these mosques and Islamic centres, you're expected to leave your intellect at the door. It's worse than that. You're expected to leave everything at the door. You're expected to leave your common sense at the door and enter a world of cognitive dissonance, of uncomfortable, an Islam that we've created that is uncomfortable, that doesn't sit right with us, that weighs heavy on our chest. And we all know it's not right, but we can't really say it's right. It was the common sense. I think that's an aspect of the professor's thought. Yes, these books can be quite heavy. Speaking with God's Name is a heavy book. Some of these halakas can talk about, you know, we're unashamedly quite smart, intellectual way of doing things here. But don't forget the but. But it is all about an Islam that deep down is intuitive, if only we choose to listen to it. We've got a halakha to get through, so I wanted to say a lot more about like how I came across Usuli and stuff, but
next time.
Next time.
To be continued.
If I'm allowed back on the platform. Is that it? But before I go, Professor, like I say this every single day to myself, but I don't think I say it to you enough. Just thank you, because I know the Professor gets a lot of letters saying, you know, you saved my faith in Islam. My faith in Islam was never in doubt. I converted to Islam. I always believed in Islam. I always believed in the Prophet. But I had just given up on Muslims. And your work and what you're doing has restored my faith in Muslims. As long as somebody is saying it, and as long as others are prepared to listen, then it's not over. Then there's hope. If somebody's saying it and people are prepared to listen, to take it seriously, there's hope. We might be under attack, we might be in the trenches, taking grenades, but we're still in the battle. There's still hope. So thank you.
That was absolutely brilliant.
It was so brilliant. I need 2 minutes.
You need 2 minutes. Okay, so Sheikh needs 2 minutes, but let me just say, I mean, you know, this is why I think people needed to meet some of the people here, because you see, like, what we're doing is something very special. And I think that the people that feel passionate, I think it is 5 stages, because the 5th stage is meeting the professor and reading his work and discovering, how can I sustainably be a Muslim and not lose my mind? You know, and that this is the hope. And this is the same experience that I had when I encountered the professor, you know, 27 whatever years ago, because I had a year of that same experience. And it's so interesting because so many people use very similar words. You said cold water to a thirsty person. I said fresh air to a dying, you know, suffocating person. That was exactly my experience, and other people have said something very similar since then. So this is why I certainly have felt in my entire, you know, Muslim life that if Islam has a future, it's through this, and it's, you know, I will live and die by, you know, serving this message. And so alhamdulillah, Joe is, you know, so special, which now you've seen, and you can see why God chose him to be in charge of this very special project, because he is definitely an overachiever, definitely a workaholic, definitely a perfectionist, but is one of the most beautiful souls I've ever met. And so I feel very blessed to know Joe, and now hopefully you all feel some of that as well.